Well, hello, happy Wednesday, middle of the week here, coming to you live in For the Love of Dragons. My name is Araya Onra. I am your local dragon guide, your resident dragon. And I just come every week to answer your questions, share interesting topics or discussions about all things dragon. Been doing it for a lot of years now, so there's a great volume of video information like this that you can peruse through to answer all your questions on the YouTube channel for Invoke Healing International. Just look up Invoke Healing International on YouTube and you'll find a Dragons playlist and a plethora of subjects, questions, topics, just you name it, it's going to be there. So use that as a great resource. I'm here every week to talk to you guys, and you can email or send me questions. As today's questions were from an email. One of my regulars that sends me stuff here and there when they're feeling stuff or needing some more deeper pieces. And I love those because every time we have one of these discussions, we go a little bit deeper with it, or I get to answer and think about things that I don't normally think about maybe, or it wasn't a question that I would have asked, but I loved hearing the answer and finding that information. So love these, and we're going to dive in. Today we're discussing DragonHearts and DragonRiders and some very specific questions that George had asked about them. And I want you to know that there are several discussions I've done in that playlist on YouTube channel, or you can find them in the For the Love of Dragons Facebook group. It's just, I find a lot harder to scroll through the archive of video topics, but if you know how to do that easily and that works for you, go ahead and do that. So in that archive, there are several discussions on DragonHearts and DragonRiders in particular, how I consider them to be formed, who they are, what they be, that kind of thing. So I'm not going to deeply dive into that today. I'm going to go on his questions and add to that. So let's just dive in and read his questions, and I'll see how I'll probably need to answer them one at a time. So, do DragonHearts and DragonRiders represent evolutionary journeys for dragons? For example, do all DragonHearts go through the DragonRider experience and, quote, graduation? So that's a really interesting thing to consider, because all of us on a soul level, whether you're dragon or something else, are going through constant incarnational experiences to broaden, to evolve, to expand, and we become more and more complex as beings, right? We will always go back to our home energy, especially in an ascension process like we're in. That's what we're trying to connect to most directly, to get the lowest, densest part of ourself merged back into that awareness, that state of consciousness, and that perspective point. But for me, the Dragon Heart versus the Dragon Rider, and I'll just go simply into this, you can reference back some other videos, but the Dragon Heart is one who stays at their core, like they're a dragon, they stay in that full framework of energy, and they have incarnational experiences out and off of that. The Dragon Rider is an experience that on a soul level you can choose to do from your mainframe as a split. Like I consider it like a twin flame split with self, in the sense of that pairing is so tightly knit and woven together as dragon and rider that what happens to one happens to the other. So if a rider is injured, the dragon is injured. If the dragon is sick, the rider is sick. And they can never be too far apart energetically. So as long as they can maintain an energetic link, that's there. And the rider does not have to be humanoid or star being form, like a form like we imagine, with legs able to straddle that dragon and do that. It's subtly different than that, especially in the higher platforms where we don't necessarily drop down into energetic form the way we recognize them from this dimensional platform. So in that question, is it something that all Dragon Hearts and Dragon Riders or do Dragon Hearts and Dragon Riders represent evolutionary journeys for dragons? For me, a dragon is always a Dragon Heart at their base, at their core. But if they choose from that core level to go into the Dragon Rider experience, and so not all dragons will, not all Dragon Hearts will do that, just because they're choosing different experiences. They don't have to evolve. But it's one way of experiencing what would be like a twin flame split by going through the Dragon Rider experience. So no, not all will go through it. And you don't have to go through that as an evolutionary experience to graduate. if you do choose it, you will go through lots of different levels of that experience in order to come out the other side and complete it and actually remerge that back in. So when I experience Dragon Riders from, say, in a reading, or I'm working with people and I can tell that they're more of a Dragon Rider energy, that's because that's what's presenting to me for their energetic, because they're in that cycle of evolution. Way back beyond that, they were not incarnated. They were not on a soul level created to be Dragon Rider. It was like their first choice, their first, I'm going to go this way. Now, the Dragon Heart can also have other, like if you imagine it like a tree going down or a crystal growing down of other incarnational experiences, they might choose to branch off and have the Dragon Rider experience down from this level of themselves. And that would bring different experiences and a different level of where you circle back to. So there's lots of different potentials and possibilities here. But I think to answer George's question is no, not every dragon that is brought in on a soul level as dragon will go through that. I would say because dragons are so ancient, many of them have or will at some point choose that, but it's not a requirement. It's not a necessary thing that they have to go through. So his second question, are Dragon Riders unawake Dragon Hearts who eventually become them? So in that sense, taking what we just explained, they may literally be unaware of that higher aspect because at their core, they are essentially a Dragon Heart. A Dragon Heart is that core framework of dragon energy before it split, before it chose the Dragon Rider experience. So are they unawake to that aspect? They may be, or they may have some inkling that they know their dragon, they feel that Dragon Heart, but I don't know why. I'm just in this experience of knowing like I've got a rider, I've got this other part of me that I have to merge and integrate in. And that's usually the completion level they're at, where they're, once they get that Dragon Rider completion and come into that knowing and that merge, that's when they'll become aware of their Dragon Heart. So that was a really interesting question that he was working through to even have that perception in mind of like, well, what about this direction? So are Dragon Riders unawake Dragon Hearts? I don't like the word unawake because I think it's better that they're just unaware. And you can choose your own wording of where they're at in their journey. And like all of us, every part of my journey in the last 20 plus years, since it was fall 2002 when my awakening really began in earnest, moving into that winter, so early 2003. So yeah, 20 years of really earnest seeking and my path really opening up. Was I at that point unaware of my dragon aspect? I was. I could have been considered unawake, I guess, but unaware in the sense of I was moving towards it and it eventually presented itself, but I had to remember other pieces first because we have to establish not the rules, but the gateways and portals of energy that we open to keep accessing that higher information that is ours. And so in that sense, most of us are unaware or unawake to aspects of ourselves until we get much further on in the journey, like most of you are getting to now. Where we're at planetarily, evolutionarily, there are many, many that are very aware of their soul level configuration. So that's been a process of, yep, I was unaware up until now, and now it can finally come in because I'm ready for that level of information. So, yeah, I would say, George, I like unaware better than unawake, because unawake sounds like that they're intentionally sleeping, and that was part of the game. So I guess both are linguistically correct, but I just like to feel of unaware better because they're going to come into awareness. Yes, they're going to awaken, but you may feel like you're already awakening. It's just more levels of information that you're going to access. Can someone who is not aware or awake and doesn't know about Dragon Riders and Dragon Hearts and their sacred work be, quote, riding on someone else's dragon, with the permission of them, of course, until they are far enough along to ride their own dragon or become a Dragon Heart themselves? So in that sense, George is actually answering his own questions. He's realizing that hierarchy of a journey into awareness of the different aspects of yourself. But I love this question where he says, can you actually be riding on someone else's dragon? And the next question relates to that as well. If someone wants to work with dragons but doesn't know how to, or know of one to work with, can they ask to ride share? Is that possible or available? So this is the same concept of like riding someone else's dragon. So my response to that is, if there is a dragon rider team that is in the 5th dimension or higher and is acting as a guide for someone here on Earth that has come in to be a guide for humanity, then yes, you would be riding their dragon because they've already consented to be working with you. They're going to present all aspects of themselves to be available to assist you. So you could be riding their dragon, or they don't have to be a dragon rider even for someone to have the sensation of riding a dragon, because your dragon guides, any guides that step in that are dragon, that are there to assist you, whether they're an actual just full-on dragon or a rider. So when I say dragon heart, that's got to be a clarification, because at the core they're dragon, but a dragon heart is someone who has taken another form but is always connected straight onto the dragon, different than the rider configuration. So in that sense of this question, if I have a guide who is a dragon, I'm not dealing with their dragon heart. Their dragon aspect is right in front of me. They may let me ride them. I've had that early on in my journey where I was taken on many incredible flights and journeys, and I had that sensation. And what it was doing was reminding me of that dragon flight, that aspect of the freedom of it, the feel of it, the wind across the appendages. And that brought in so much memory for me. That was how they were helping me and guiding me. I did not have any guides that were specifically dragon riders where both were presenting, but I've had a lot of clients who have that configuration. And I would say whether it's the rider or the dragon, if they're both showing up and have different work for you, in that sense, yes, you would be able to use that. And you don't have, it's part of your process of awakening. So they're offering that to you if they're your guide. Can you ask for that? Absolutely. If you want a guide that is specifically dragon rider or specifically dragon heart, you might have someone show up, say, okay, so let's think about this, Merlin. A lot of people know Merlin. They've had Merlin step up as a guide or be in their field at some point. I remember being taken to Merlin's garden quite often in my meditations for specific things. And Merlin is, for me, a dragon heart. He is literally that ruby garnet dragon that you often see him pictured with. That's more of his true form, but he works with humanity mostly as his Merlin aspect, which is, for me, he's a dragon heart as Merlin, and that heart dragon is his true form. So if you want that as a guide, you can absolutely put out a request for specific guides. You can ask to have it be a dragon rider, and you can ask to ride on them. You can have temporary guides show up. You can go and do any of the meditations in the book or on the website as guided meditations, or your own meditations with dragons. Have a dragon show up and ask to go for a ride. Like, will you take me somewhere that will help me remember more? Or just take me for a ride so that I can experience and remember that aspect. Absolutely. So George and everyone who's listening to this now and on the replay, I see a few of you out there. Yeah, so in his last questions, even if you don't know how to work with them, you don't have to know how to work with any guide to ask them to step in and show you things. And if you need to know more directly how to work with them, they will either show you or they will guide you towards a work like my own guidebook that is going to help you, give you those tools. That's what your guides do. Whatever, I had so many fascinating books come across my path thanks to my guides that were constantly leading me down the exploration of discovery of star being aspects and Pleiadian and Orion and all these different pieces, and then others where it was my journey of awakening and becoming aware. So hopefully that's insightful and helpful. George, loved the questions. Everybody out there, I encourage you, please send me your questions. I'm not going to think of the same things you are, and the answers always come. This is the beautiful thing, is even if I haven't thought of a question, when I start talking about it, because I'm merged into my dragon heart, I have access to so much information that blows me away sometimes. If you would have told me 7-8 years ago that I would be able to sit and be on a panel discussion or on an interview or like this, and sit and talk without notes or outlines or any of that, and expound for a couple of hours on different dragon questions and topics, I would have thought, oh my God, that would be stressful. I would be freaked out to do that. I would feel like I would have to really dive into meditation to get all the answers. And yet, because of the work I've done in the last years to really come into the fullness of myself, it's like having access to this amazing library that is just loaded, because it's all within me. It's all part of me. It's information that resides in me because I've lived it before. And you're waking up to that aspect within yourself. And it doesn't have to be the same as mine. You have your own wealth of information and subjects that you're going to be able to expound on in the same way. And people will ask you maybe about crystals or about healing auric fields or something. And you'll realize, like, oh my God, I actually know a lot about that. And you'll just start talking, and that leads you home. So hopefully this was insightful. I always love these. I'll look forward to whatever is next week. In between now and then, I think we're headed for some serious snow or weather coming in here in the next 3 days. We've got a winter storm warning watch. So I'm being conscious of that, and actually going to dive into sort of a cocoon. I love winter weather storms like that one, allow skiing on the other side of it, but two, I've had this brewing feeling of taking some time to record some more guided meditations with some of the higher octave dragons that aren't available yet. Yeah, unless you've been in one of my programs or classes, like on the guided meditations, there's tons of beginner material, but I know some of you are anxious or waiting for those higher octave guided experiences. So I might be diving into some of that here this week and next. All right, wishing you a beautiful week. We'll see you next time. And yeah, send your questions in or go sign up for a discovery call if you have questions that you want to dive into as to where your path is. It's not a reading per se, but it can be very insightful as to where you're at and what kind of things would help you the most to get moved forward. All right. Bye for now.